A river is more than an amenity. It is a treasure that offers a necessity of life that must be rationed among those who have power over it. Oliver Wendell Holmes.
Manchester was settled in the early 1700s as an agricultural community along the banks of the Merrimack River. But as most people know, Manchester grew up into a large textile city. In fact, the Emskake Mills was the largest single textile mill in the world. Unfortunately, everyone used the Merrimack River for the dumping ground, not only the textile mills, but all the residents of Manchester, because they had no wastewater treatment at that time. And all they knew is that they put the pollution, the trash, whatever it may be, into the river and went away downstream. And unfortunately, they had little regard to the residents downstream. The Merrimack River, mainly because of the textile industry, unfortunately became one of the most polluted rivers in the world. And actually, in the 1960s, it was on a dismal top 10 list for most polluted rivers in the country.
People always had their backs turned to the river. So for instance, when a town was built, when a city was developed, that was for power, that was for dumping waste. And so it was out of sight, out of mind for most people. So big factories along the Merrimack, smaller areas, even households had pipes that discharged waste directly into the river. So that's really when it started being less about a fishery and for recreation and more about a waste dumping place and power generation.
But we have made tremendous strides in cleaning up the Merrimack River. And the biggest thing was the Clean Water Act of 1972. Nearly 50 years ago, federal legislation was passed that provided funds to clean our waterways. And the Clean Water Act was really one of the most successful pieces of legislation ever. I equate it to the success NASA had putting people on the moon and the success on the Eisenhower administration when they built our country's interstates. In 50 short years, we have done amazing things cleaning up our waterways, including the Merrimack River. Today, the Merrimack River is literally the cleanest it's ever been in 200 years old. Are there problems with the Merrimack? Yes, there still are. It's still, the technical term is impaired by several elements. So the state of New Hampshire has a list called the 303D list, where they list impairments in waterways. In various segments of the Merrimack are various pollutants. The majority are metals, copper, lead, and aluminum, all from our society that leach into the river.
Right now, it's a combination. Primarily are combined sewer overflows. So in cases where bigger cities have treatment plants, they can be overwhelmed by having stormwater enter the system, and treatment becomes less of an effective area for those wastewater treatment plants, for instance. In the case of illicit connections, those are areas where in cities there's old piping and that plumbing hasn't separated the wastewater that goes to treatment plants from stormwater, for when you see grates in a road, for instance. And those are combined, and similar to what we just talked about is combined sewer overflows. Those can create pollution where people think that their waste is going into a wastewater treatment plant, but in fact it's going directly to the river in those plumbed places that are discharging. Those are actually pretty easy to see. It's usually a pipe that goes directly into the river.
The city of Manchester invested over $100 million over the past 20 years in CSO abatements. On the west side of Manchester, we invested $58 million and eliminated almost all the combined sewer overflows, or CSOs. And now the city has committed $230 million over the next 20 years to combat CSOs on the east side of the Merrimack River. So as I said, the city of Manchester, a long-standing commitment to improve water quality, investing over $300 million to help eliminate combined sewer overflows.
And then we talk about all of us. That's where we're having animal waste. That's where we're having nutrients, people over-fertilizing lawns, for instance. Anything that runs off into the river, that's what's called NonPoint source pollution, also known as polluted runoff. And those are harder to identify. Those non-point sources of pollution are pretty much everywhere along the river and even upland into the watersheds. Those are a lot harder to treat.
Last year, we pulled out 97 ton of debris and over 7,000 hypodermic needles. So what we do here, we're a very aggressive environmental group, and we hands-on get out there and clean it. We trap it with the booms. It's a device that goes out 150 feet and actually traps everything that's floating down in certain areas. The wind direction current brings all the trash. So it's very important that we put these booms in those spots. So basically, we're trapping as much as we can, all the microplastics, all the deplorables come out of the CSOs. And we have pulled out 84 vehicles to this date now. When a boat comes in from being on the water, we actually bag and tag all the trash and contract the bags, bring it back, and we recycle it. We empty it in a kiddie pool and we pull it apart. So we know how many bottles, how many cans, how many lighters, how many hypodermic needles. We know exactly what we bring here, and we put it on a manifest for that day. So it's very important that we recycle as much as we can and keep a manifest of what we do.
The river's ecosystem is really affected by both these point and non-point sources or runoff into the river. And those are difficult to assess because not all of the data have been collected. We do know that when there's runoff from erosion, those can smother fish eggs, so spawning areas. We also know that that nutrient overload can cause algal blooms. It can deprive the water of oxygen. And so the ecosystem is greatly affected there.
A new one that we've been working on is stormwater. And that's really the gray water we have, and that's a tremendous problem because many people use fertilizers loaded with nutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and those go into our river and cause algae blooms, which is unhealthy for the river because it depletes the oxygen of the river, taking away plant life and aquatic life. So between CSOs, stormwater, and providing sewer service to the residents of Manchester are really three of the biggest things to help clean the Merrimack River.
Drinking water has been a difficult issue where other sources have been running low or running dry. A lot of them are looking now to rivers to augment their water supplies. So the bigger cities, such as Manchester in particular, have looked at that. And then smaller communities are looking for wells along the rivers where there are stratified drift aquifers, there's sand and gravel, where nice clean water is running underground in rivers of their own sort of way, and making sure that those areas are not taking too much water from those wells because those wells are fed by the river itself. So I think all of the communities are struggling with it that provide water, drinking water in particular, because whether it's withdrawn directly from the river or whether it's wells along the river, that's all contributing to how much water is being taken from the river. We want to make sure that the river water is clean because whether it's withdrawn directly or whether it's from one of those wells, it has to be clean water with minimal treatment.
I'm very proud to say that the city of Manchester is using the Merrimack River for its drinking water. In fact, right now under construction in Hooksett is a brand new 8 million gallon a day water treatment plant that Manchester Waterworks is constructing. And that water is actually targeted for southeastern New Hampshire, where the state has implemented a wide-ranging water plan. So residents in Salem, Wyndham, Danville will all be getting the water from the Merrimack River. And in fact, 500,000 people downstream of this facility take their drinking water from the Merrimack River. Nashua, Tingsboro, Lowell, Haverhill. So our job here, the Manchester Wastewater Treatment Plant, is very, very important, again, to provide clean water to the 500,000 people that are drawing their drinking water out of the Merrimack River. Why should people care about restoring the Merrimack River? Well, for the physical health and economic well-being of the individuals and the state. One of the greatest discoveries in science was the link between waterborne diseases and dirty water. People cannot live without clean water. Number two, clean water is really the economic engine of the state of New Hampshire. As you know, tourism is still one of our number one industries. One of the primary reasons is our pristine waterways, Lake Winnipesaukee, the Pemmican up in the White Mountains, our coastal areas. So clean water is imperative to the physical well-being of the state and the economic well-being of the state. There are many programs that residents can get involved with to help clean the Merrimack River and surrounding water bodies. In fact, the Environmental Protection Division sponsors an urban pond cleanup every year. And there are several other river groups that they can join in. There's the Merrimack River Watershed Association.
It's very important to take care of the river. If we're not doing it, who's going to do it? I think we are the only environmental group doing what we do. We go to New Hampshire, clean up lakes in New Hampshire. We go to Millville, Canopy Lake, wherever we're asked to go, even streams. If there's a purpose, we'll go. And if there's a small little budget to cover the cost of the trash, we'll do it. So we're open to pretty much anything.
Ordinary people, and I'm an ordinary person, can help the river by being involved in an organization that monitors water quality. So volunteers, citizen scientists, I love to call them, get out on the river. They collect data, whether it's just a windshield survey, driving up and down the river, collecting pictures, whether it's people who like to get their hands wet and dirty, can collect samples, just working at the local levels with their communities, whether it's a conservation commission or a river advisory committee, a watershed association. These are all ways that you can do it. And then just informally, if you're on the river, you can help with that by reporting anything that you see. So for instance, you might smell something, you might see something, taking pictures and contacting the state agencies or your local watershed association and finding out if that's really a cause for concern, including enforcement.
But it's also very simple things. We discussed before fertilizer. Use a low nutrient fertilizer with low phosphorus, low nitrogen. So when that runs off, it minimizes harm. Simple pollution. Don't throw things out your window.
Our job is to make sure that we find ways that touch upon each person in each community to connect with the river and make them care. It's about recreation, it's about fish habitat, it's about making sure that it can be drank with minimal treatment. It's about making sure that recreationists have a wonderful time and get on the river and don't fear falling into it if their canoe goes overboard. Lots of people here are swimming. So all of these are reasons that nearly anyone can be touched by the Merrimack River and care about it. And even if you're sitting in traffic on a bridge looking at the Merrimack River, it really touches all of us, and we want to make sure that they care about it in all those ways.